See the bees on his head?
Yep, they're lighting him up, and he's eating the honeycomb
And it does
anyway.
nothing to him.
That's crazy. They're biting that honeycomb like it's a snack, and all those bees are on his head, his hands.
And they're just,
Doesn't bother them.
it doesn't bother them.
They're fine with it, and their body's also gotten immune to it.
Amid thousands of small islands scattered across the Andaman Sea, between Myanmar and Thailand, exists a community that many call the last sea nomads of the ocean. They are the Moken people. While most of us spend nearly our entire lives on land, the Moken grow up amid the waves and water. The sea is not just their source of livelihood. It is their school, their highway, their source of food, and also the home that has nurtured countless generations. For many centuries, the Moken have lived on traditional wooden boats called kabang. They move with the seasons, following fish schools and the rhythm of the ocean. Their life depends almost entirely on the sea. Every day the men paddle out to hunt fish, catch squid, and search for creatures on the seabed. Women and children gather clams, snails, and other seafood along the shore. Whatever the sea provides is traded for rice, fuel, or essential goods from the land. To outsiders, this is already a very unusual life. But what caught the attention of scientists lies in another ability. For a long time, local fishermen have passed down strange stories about Moken children. They say these children can dive underwater and see small objects on the seabed that ordinary people cannot notice at all. At first, many thought these were just tales embellished over generations. After all, human eyes are not designed to see clearly underwater. When we open our eyes underwater, the image usually becomes blurry. Water changes the way light enters the eye, making everything much harder to recognize. That's why swimming goggles were invented. But the Moken seem not to need them. In 1999, a research team from Lund University in Sweden decided to go there to find out the truth. While observing Moken children playing and foraging underwater, they quickly realized the rumors were not unfounded. The children could dive into the clear water and easily pick up small objects from the seabed with astonishing accuracy. Meanwhile, many adults from outside could barely see similar things. The researchers conducted numerous tests to measure the underwater vision of Moken children. The results showed they could indeed see significantly better than European children of the same age. This discovery quickly drew international scientific attention. Could this be evidence that the Moken possess a special biological trait? After many years of research, the answer turned out to be even more interesting than imagined. The eyes of the Moken do not differ in structure from the rest of humanity. The difference lies in their ability to adapt. When diving underwater, their pupils can constrict much more strongly than normal, helping the image become sharper. In other words, they have learned to use their eyes in a way that most of us have never developed. The Moken are proof of how amazingly the human body can change when it must adapt to its living environment. And if the Moken have turned the ocean into their home with eyes trained over many generations, then deep in the vast tropical rainforests of Africa exists another community. People who can do what even modern maps and positioning devices sometimes struggle with. They can step into an endless sea of trees and almost never get lost. If tomorrow you were dropped into a tropical rainforest spanning hundreds of kilometers, how long do you think you could survive? One day? Or just a few hours before realizing you have no idea which way to go? In movies, getting lost in the forest is often the start of an adventure, but in real life, it can be a nightmare. Once you lose your sense of direction, everything around you immediately looks the same. Tree trunks follow tree trunks. Trails suddenly disappear. Even determining the sun's direction sometimes becomes impossible under the dense canopy. That is why many survival experts consider tropical rainforests one of the most difficult environments on Earth to navigate. But the strange thing is that there are people who step into that place without bringing any map. No compass needed, no GPS. They walk through vast forests as if strolling on a familiar path in front of their house. And the scariest part is, they almost never go wrong. Deep in the rainforest stretching across Central Africa is the homeland of the Baka, one of the world's most famous hunter-gatherer communities. For many generations, their life has been tied to the deep forest to the point where the boundary between humans and nature seems to blur. To us, the forest is a massive green block. To them, it is a living map. Where outsiders only see trees, the Baka see signs that point the way. A slightly leaning tree trunk can tell them where they are. A faint footprint on the ground can recount a story that happened hours ago. Even distant sounds contain information that most of us would never notice. Many researchers who have lived with the Baka say that traveling with them feels like walking beside a living navigation system. After many hours of movement, the researchers often have to constantly check their position to make sure they haven't gotten lost. Meanwhile, the local guides walk calmly, almost never hesitating. What makes this ability special is not that they memorize a few fixed paths. In fact, the Baka often move through areas with no trails at all. They seem to carry the entire forest inside their heads. Every stream, every clearing, every hunting ground is connected into a vast picture that outsiders can hardly imagine. This ability is especially important during hunts. An animal can disappear from sight in just a few seconds, but the Baka can still track its trail for hours. What we see as a few disturbed leaves or faint marks on the ground look like glowing arrows to them. It's almost like a sixth sense. It is also the result of thousands of years of survival in an environment where even a small mistake can make a person disappear into an endless sea of trees. And if the Baka have learned to read every secret of the forest, then the next community chooses to live in a place that most of us wouldn't even dare look down at, a world of sheer cliffs where one wrong step could be the last. Are you afraid of heights? Many people feel their legs go weak just standing near the edge of a tall building. The feeling of dizziness appears almost immediately when the brain realizes the deep void below. It is a very natural fear, because one wrong step can lead to irreversible consequences. But in West Africa, there exists a community that has spent many centuries living in places where most of us wouldn't even want to stand too close. They are the Dogon people. Their homeland lies around the Bandiagara cliffs in Mali, one of Africa's most impressive landscapes. From afar, this place looks like a giant wall created by nature, stretching for hundreds of kilometers across the arid land. Towering rock formations rise from the plains as if dividing two completely different worlds. What surprises visitors is not just the cliffs themselves, but the villages built on them. Many houses are constructed right on steep slopes. Grain stores are located in positions that make outsiders feel uneasy just looking at them. There are narrow paths clinging to the cliffs, so tight that only one person can move along them. Looking from below, it's hard to believe humans can live in such places generation after generation. Yet, for the Dogon, this is not a dangerous place. This is home. Many centuries ago, this area frequently saw wars, conflicts, and pursuits between different forces. To protect their families, beliefs, and culture, the Dogon ancestors gradually retreated to the most inaccessible places. Over time, what was once a natural fortress became their permanent homeland. Children grow up among steep stone steps. Adults carry water, food, and building materials along paths that make visitors cling tightly to every step. What outsiders see as a life or death challenge has become a normal part of daily life. Many who have been here describe the feeling of watching the Dogon move on the rocky slopes as like watching professional climbers. They walk with a confidence that others find hard to understand. Sections of the path that make tourists stop to gather courage seem to create no pressure at all for them. But if it only stopped at adapting to treacherous terrain, the Dogon probably wouldn't have become one of the world's most famous communities. What made their name spread far beyond Mali's borders comes from a completely different mystery. A mystery related to the stars. In the early 20th century, French anthropologists began spending many years studying this community. While talking with the elders, they recorded stories about the origin of the world, celestial bodies, and objects appearing in the night sky. At first, these were considered just oral legends like countless other cultures around the world. But then some researchers believed they had discovered very unusual details. According to records published later, the Dogon seemed to possess knowledge about certain celestial bodies that many thought could not be observed with the naked eye. This information quickly spread around the world. Books were published, television programs were made, and soon after, a series of bold hypotheses began to emerge. Some believed the Dogon were preserving an ancient lost source of knowledge. Others thought this was evidence of astronomical understanding far ahead of its time. Some hypotheses even went so far as to suggest that the source of this knowledge did not entirely come from Earth. Of course, not everyone agreed. In the decades that followed, researchers continued to debate the accuracy of those initial records. Some argued the information had been overinterpreted. Others believe such knowledge could have come through earlier contact with the outside world. To this day, the debate has not really ended. But perhaps the most interesting thing is not whether that mystery is true or false, but how it reflects a familiar truth in human history. That sometimes the communities living in the most remote places are the ones that make the whole world most curious. And if the Dogon make us look up at the sky in search of answers, then the next community amazes the world in a completely different way. They are not famous for ancient mysteries. They are famous for their feet, because some of them can run so far that even modern marathon athletes are astonished. In 1993 in Colorado, an ultramarathon was entering its most grueling stage. After many hours continuously tackling challenging mountain trails, most athletes were nearing their limits. This was the kind of race that even well-trained people must prepare for over many months, even years. Among the familiar faces in the running world at that time appeared a man whom almost no one noticed. He did not look like the typical image of a professional athlete. No support team, no advanced equipment, no signs that he was about to create one of the most memorable stories of the event. His name was Victoriano Churro. When the race ended, those present that day had to remember that name. The man, over 50 years old from the remote mountains of Mexico, had outrun many opponents decades younger and won. What astonished everyone was not just the result, it was how he did it. While many struggled with fatigue, Victoriano seemed to maintain his familiar pace. To the modern sports world, that story seemed like an anomaly. But to the community where he was born, it was not anything too special. Victoriano is a Tarahumara, or more precisely, a Raramuri, a people living among the vast canyons in northern Mexico, where the terrain is so rugged that many villages remain isolated from the outside world. Mountain ranges connect one after another, deep valleys and endless trails have shaped life here for centuries. In such an environment, distance is perceived very differently. Distances that city people consider too far are sometimes just a normal part of the daily routine for the Raramuri. Children grow up among slopes and winding paths. Continuous movement gradually becomes a natural part of life, just as many of us are used to sitting behind the wheel or stepping onto a train. Perhaps that's why, when the first explorers heard stories about them, many thought they were exaggerations. Tales of journeys lasting from morning until night, of people who could keep going forward while others had stopped long ago, sounded more like legends than reality. Then more and more people witnessed it with their own eyes. One of the most famous traditions of the Raramuri is their community races that stretch across many mountains. Rather than focusing only on speed, these races are like a test of endurance. Participants run while kicking a small wooden ball forward on rugged trails. Sometimes the competition lasts from day into night. Sometimes the distance far exceeds the standard marathon distance that most of the world is familiar with. To outsiders, that seems almost unreasonable. The human body is supposed to stop at a certain limit, but the Raramuri always seem to have the ability to keep going a little further, and then a little further, and then a little further. The interesting thing is that researchers have never found evidence that they possess some super gene that turns them into running machines. Instead, many experts believe the secret lies in the combination of their living environment, lifestyle, and habits maintained over countless generations. They are people who have spent their entire lives maximizing what that body can do. They remind us that endurance was once one of humanity's greatest advantages. Before engines, before modern vehicles, it was the ability to keep moving forward while other species had to stop that helped our ancestors cross vast continents and conquer nearly every environment on the planet. And in a remote corner of Mexico, the Raramuri are still preserving a part of that story. But no matter how harsh the canyons of Copper Canyon are, they still cannot compare to the land that the next community calls home. Because there, winter is not just one season of the year. It is a prolonged survival challenge, where temperatures can drop to levels many people cannot even imagine. Every year, when winter begins to tighten its grip on northern Siberia, thousands of Nenets prepare for a journey that most of us can hardly imagine. They pack up their entire homes, dismantle every tent pole, tie all belongings onto sleds, gather the reindeer herd, then quietly set off. Not to travel, not to explore new lands, but simply because that is how they have lived for many centuries. The Nenets are one of the last large nomadic communities still existing on Earth. Their homeland stretches across the vast tundra in the north of Russia, where modern maps only show nearly endless empty spaces. This is a world very different from anywhere most of us have ever known. No fertile fields, no dense forests. Instead, there is snow, ice, freezing wind, and vast open lands stretching to the horizon. The life of the Nenets revolves around one single animal, reindeer. Everything begins from there. A healthy reindeer herd means food, clothing, transportation, and the ability to survive the winter. In many families, the number of reindeer is more important than money. They are not just assets, but the foundation of an entire way of life. It is precisely because of their dependence on this livestock that the Nenets cannot stay in one place for too long. When food sources change with the seasons, they must move with them. These journeys can stretch for hundreds or even over 1,000 kilometers each year, making them one of the communities with the longest traditional migration routes in the world. Viewed from above, Nenets groups moving across the tundra look like small dots crossing a white ocean. There are almost no prominent landmarks around, only frozen ground, snow-covered rivers, and winds that can change the landscape overnight. What amazes many researchers is how they navigate in that environment. An outsider might see monotony. The Nenets see information. They recognize where the ice is solid enough to cross. They understand signs of changing weather. They know which areas are safe for the herd and which to avoid. Much of that knowledge does not exist in textbooks. It has been accumulated from the experience of countless generations who have lived and moved on the same land. This adaptation is also reflected in their homes. The chum, cone-shaped tents covered with multiple layers of reindeer hides can be dismantled and set up again in a relatively short time. That seemingly simple design has helped them survive winters where temperatures can drop below -40 degrees Celsius. But the biggest challenge for the Nenets today no longer comes only from the weather. Climate change is altering the familiar rhythm of the Arctic. Routes used for many generations have become harder to predict. Some areas freeze later or thaw earlier than before. Meanwhile, industrial projects are appearing more and more across the vast tundra. Nevertheless, many Nenets families continue their journeys as their ancestors once did. Each passing season marks another new migration, a new journey, and a new effort to maintain a lifestyle that has existed for hundreds of years in one of the harshest environments on the planet. If the Tarahumara amaze the world with the distances human feet can conquer, the Nenets prove that humans can turn places that seem uninhabitable into their home. And the final community in this list is perhaps even more special, because their secret lies not only in their lifestyle, but right inside their bodies. For thousands of years, humans have tried every way to conquer the ocean. We build bigger ships, dive deeper, create increasingly advanced equipment. But no matter how much technology develops, there is still a limit that the human body can hardly overcome. We cannot breathe underwater. That is why the story of the Bajau makes scientists especially interested. Because sometimes, when observing them, people feel like they are seeing humans who belong to another world. The Bajau live scattered across the seas of Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines. For many generations, their life has been closely tied to underwater hunting. For many communities, the water surface is where the journey ends. For the Bajau, that is where the real work begins. They plunge into deep waters to find fish, octopus, sea cucumbers, and many other creatures. The only air they carry is the last breath before disappearing beneath the surface. Then they keep going down, deeper and deeper, farther and farther from the surface. Many Bajau divers can reach depths of more than 60 meters by free diving. To visualize, that is equivalent to the height of a building about 20 stories tall. At that depth, water pressure is much greater than what the human body usually experiences. But what confuses researchers is not just the depth, but the frequency. They do not do this as a sporting achievement, not once in a lifetime, not a few times a year, but repeatedly as a normal part of life. For many years, the most common explanation was practice, that the Bajau simply spent so much time underwater that they became better than others. It sounded reasonable, until scientists began looking inside their bodies. In 2018, an international research team published results that surprised many. When comparing the Bajau with neighboring communities without a sea diving tradition, they discovered a clear difference. The spleen of the Bajau is on average about 50% larger. 50%. That is not a small difference. It is the kind of difference large enough to make researchers ask many more questions. The spleen acts as a natural reservoir of red blood cells. When a person holds their breath, this organ contracts and pumps additional red blood cells into the blood, helping the body use oxygen more efficiently. This is also part of the diving reflex that all mammals possess. This means the Bajau enter each dive with a biological advantage that most of us do not have. And what is even more remarkable is that this trait is not only found in those who frequently go to sea, it is also present in many other members of the community. That is when the story goes beyond the scope of skill. It touches on a much more fascinating topic: human adaptation. Some scientists suggest that after hundreds of years of living based on sea diving, environmental pressure may have helped shape biological traits that allow the Bajau to survive more effectively underwater. The research also found genetic variants related to the physiological response during diving, making this community one of the most studied cases when talking about human adaptation in modern times. Of course, the Bajau are not mermaids. They are still humans just like all of us. But that is precisely what makes their story so astonishing. Because in the entire list today, this is perhaps the rare example where scientists not only observed an extraordinary skill, they saw signs that the human body itself may be changing to adapt to its living environment. And perhaps that is what makes the Bajau the perfect final chapter for this journey. From the eyes of the Moken, the navigation ability of the Baka, the endurance of the Tarahumara, or the endless migrations of the Nenets, all show how amazingly humans can adapt. But the Bajau take that story one step further. They make us wonder about one thing: whether the limits we still believe are fixed, are they really fixed or not? Perhaps the most surprising thing is not what these tribes can do, but that they remind us that humans still have many abilities that the modern world no longer uses. In your opinion, which tribe in today's list possesses the ability that amazes you the most, and why? Thank you for following. See you again in the next exploration.